like history of it all, you know, the only transportation they had was a horse. I couldn't imagine hunting buffalo afoot and running them off a cliff. So, you know, that's how they used to hunt them. They had to run them offside the cliffs. And they'd have to do it afoot. You've seen the buffalo skull. Them guys, I mean, they're massive. And to run one down on a little paint pony and kill it with a spear would be even more heroic, you know. I can see the honors in that, you know. And anyway, so I mean, and then that's the only mode of transportation. That's how your livelihood is to hunt and to live. Well, then it just comes into, you know, being a cowboy. Everybody's got to make a living. If you're good on a horse, what do? You go make a living with that horse. If you're good with a horse, you got a nice horse. All that stuff in there. Some people look at me when I was working in town and I was buying it all. It's just like buying a tool. Buying that saddle's like buying a welder. Buying that horse is just like buying a pickup. It's my tools of trade. It's like you buying that camera. This is how you choose to make your living. Well, within the time and that time, you're good on a horse, there's cattle to move. And even back into the 50s, there was a railhead in Apperson. They would drive them from before Fairfax got there. They'd drive them cows all the way to the railhead to get them on there. Well, that takes a pretty stout horse and a hell of a hand to get them that far. Keeping them together and everything else. So it's the tools of the trade. If you're good with it, I mean, everybody's got to make a living. So that's, I mean, like my grandpa Elmer, he started out a cowboy. You know, like I said, his uncle cooked for Chapman Barnard, was the cook. You know, drove the wagon. He worked for him up there. He said they would ride fence line, and he said sometimes you'd sleep in the saddle because you'd ride and they had what they called line shacks.
You'd sleep while riding the horse?
I've done that.
He said he did.
Yeah.
But
take naps.
You'd ride that fence line, you know, checking fences. And that fence would be so big, and that pasture would be so big, and everything else. You'd ride until you got to what they called the line shack. And it had canned beans and stuff like that it was stocked with. You would eat, stay the night, and you'd ride back. Or keep going to the next one. So, with Indians, what was natural? You were born a horseback, make your living horseback.
I like it.
So that's how I see it. I mean, and you know, a lot of your slaves and stuff did the same thing. And actually, you know, and being a minority in certain times, cowboys were the lowest of the low.
Really?
You were at the bottom of the pecking order. You were.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So they were. I mean, you do whatever you could to survive. Made living on a horse. They'd been living on a horse, making their living with a horse literally from the day they got them, you know.